I'm using my model to show how eukaryotic cells transform glucose, a food energy molecule, into usable energy called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, in the mitochondria of the eukaryotic cells. And when I started thinking about what I could use to move things through a medium for this model, I thought of Jell-O, and that led to some more food products being part of my model. I guess I was hungry. But anyway, so the brownish ring here is the outer membrane. The lasagna in here is the inner membrane, and it's got a lot of folds in it called cristae, and they function to increase the surface area. Outside of the outer membrane, we've got the cytoplasm. In between the outer and inner membranes, we've got the intermembrane space, and inside the inner membrane, we've got the matrix. And we've got some other parts of the mitochondria here that we'll talk about later when we need them. There are also some other parts of mitochondria that are not directly part of the ATP production process, like DNA, ribosomes, and granules, that I didn't include in this model so that I could have more room for ATP production. All right, so glucose is C6H12O6, and I'm going to represent the 6 carbons with these dried blueberries here. I'm not adding the oxygen and hydrogen to this part of the bottle right at the moment. They're just going to hang out in this bowl for a while so that I can manipulate my molecules a little bit more easily. But the first part of cellular respiration actually occurs outside of the outer membrane in the cytoplasm. And that step is called glycolysis. And during glycolysis, the 6-carbon glucose molecule is separated into 2 3-carbon pyruvate molecules. And when you break bonds like that, you produce energy. And we're going to call that energy ATP. Although in reality, ATP is the energy carrier. Just for simplicity, we're just going to call it ATP. And that process produced 2 ATPs, or dinosaur sprinkles in this case. Yeah. All right, but then we still have the pyruvate. The pyruvate molecule then moves through the cytoplasm, through the outer membrane, through the inner membrane space, through the inner membrane, and into the matrix. Then the process, and then the pyruvate dehydrogenase complex breaks that down into a 2-molecule carbon molecule called acetyl coenzyme A, or acetyl-CoA, and a single carbon atom that then combines with 2 oxygen atoms, leaves the mitochondria as carbon dioxide. So there, we've made our oxygens have magically appeared. All right, so we've got some carbon dioxide. That's a waste product. All right, we've got our 2 carbon atom acetyl coenzyme A right here. And besides carbon dioxide, that also produced some electrons. And the electrons are carried by an electron transport carrier called NAD. So there's a couple of electrons on their electron transport vehicle, NAD. All right, now the acetyl-CoA moves into a process called the Krebs cycle. And the Krebs cycle breaks the 2 carbon atom molecule into separate carbon atoms, which also leave the cell, or the mitochondria, as carbon dioxide again. So make some more carbon dioxide here. Okay, so we've got some more waste products, carbon dioxide. And we've got some electrons, some more electrons produced that are carried by the NAD. And also, now being carried, some electrons are being carried by another electron transport vehicle called FAD. And since we broke some bonds, we produced some more ATP, a couple of them again. Put them all over there. So we've got some more ATP being produced there. Well, the electrons are transported to the next step in the cellular respiration process called the electron transport stage. Chain, electron transport chain. All right, so these slices of apricot here represent proteins that are part of the electron transport chain. So electrons move through, they leave their vehicle, and they move through the electron transport chain. They kind of go in and out through it. And as they're doing that, they provide energy for hydrogen ions, otherwise known as protons, to be pushed through these proteins, okay? And they leave the inner membrane and matrix, and there's a whole bunch of them that all start building up in this inner membrane space, okay? And so there's a bunch of positive charge built up in this inner membrane space, and it doesn't like having a whole bunch of positive charge all in one place. So it moves to this protein called ATP, synthase, ATP synthase. This is an ATP synthase protein, and it pumps hydrogen ions through it and back into the matrix. So a whole bunch of hydrogen ions move through this ATP synthase protein and go back into the matrix over here, okay? Now, that process produces some more ATP. In fact, a whole bunch of ATP. Pumping one hydrogen ion through that ATP synthase produces 32 ATPs. So that's where the majority of ATP is produced, right there during the electron transport chain process. Now, these are hydrogen ions, remember? They combine with the electrons that had come through the proteins over here, right? They combine with those and with oxygen. And one oxygen plus two hydrogen ions plus two electrons make water. And water is the other waste product of this process. Now, where did the oxygen come from? The oxygen came into the mitochondria by your breathing. So you breathe in oxygen molecules. They move into the mitochondria. They separate so that they can combine with the hydrogens and the electrons and produce the water. And that's the other waste product besides the carbon dioxide. So the process requires an intake of glucose and oxygen and produces the waste products carbon dioxide and water and a whole bunch of ATP. And that is how the mitochondria works in a eukaryotic cell. I hope you enjoyed that.